Okay, here I am again. I'm always hunting for something, looking for the salt marsh this time. Why are you looking at me like that? Oh, my hat. It's kind of cool, isn't it? You want to know about my hat? Well, see, there's a lot of bugs in the salt marsh. Actually, there's bugs everywhere at this time of year on these expeditions, but watch this. See, as I'm moving like this, the bugs get really upset and very discombobulated by these bubbles. Actually, I'm getting discombobulated too, but it really works. It keeps the bugs off me. So you could try this. Super duper easy. Just find some corks, cut them in half, get a strong needle and a bit of strong thread. Well, I actually use embroidery silks, which you guys probably don't have, but your moms might. Sew it through, stick it on the end. Doesn't have to be a pith helmet like my African one. Can just be any kind of a hat. And then walk around and see how it works for you. It's really cool. Oh, people will laugh, but you know what? I'm the one laughing when they're swatting the bugs and I'm not. So I really want you guys to know that going into the field is wonderful, just exploring. But if you're actually doing science like we are, you have to take information down. So I'm going to show you my visual survey data sheets today. And we've actually put some in the packet that we're sending you. But you know, you also take all your supplies when you go in, and I don't know where my servant leader went. I think they disappeared on me. Usually I have a fabulous guy carrying this bag for me, so heavy. Of course, I've got everything in here except the kitchen sink, and I meant to bring that, but I couldn't get it out. Okay, so what I have in here, well, of course, first, very important, bug spray. Oh, I don't need it, but it's for other people. See, I got my bug spray here. So I got that. Yep, sunscreen, already used the sunscreen, very important. And then all the things essential to field studies. Well, I'm a fanatic about birds, so I always bring my bird book. We're definitely going to see birds in the salt marsh. They're usually amazing. And then, well, you know, Mrs. D, gotta have my dissecting kit. Now, I'm probably not going to dissect anything, but I can use some of the tweezers to pick things up when I'm examining them, so that's essential. Oh, yeah, well, this is really for Mr. D, sustenance, just in case he gets hungry, running around after me, you know. And, what's a trip into the marsh without the necessary apparatus to see my birds? So, yeah, here they are. Got this, and I can hear some of them. Those are not the marsh birds. Those are some of the ones that live in the trees, probably in the Maritime forest that leads down to the marsh. That's where we kind of are right now. Anyway, so I got my stuff, and of course I have my water. You didn't even have to ask that. You know, Mrs. D never goes anywhere without her water. Okay, so now, oh, and then just in case I, you know, need to pick something up that's really a little, well, you know, out of the ordinary, let's put it that way. Got my gloves. So any questions about the other things I have? And you're wondering what in the world is hanging around my neck on a pink shoelace. Kind of like my shoelace. It's pink because I'm a girl, you know. You do not ever go out hiking, and especially not when you're looking for a salt marsh, or anything for that matter, without your trusty compass so you can find your way back. By the way, talking about hiking, how'd you like my hiking boots? These boots have been to Mount Rainier, and they have climbed all the way around the back of that mountain up to the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Well, beautiful from my viewpoint, not necessarily from people who are looking for beauty with color, but to the Carbon Glacier. Wow. So I'm wearing the right boots, because you never know what you're going to find when you're tromping towards and into a salt marsh. Okay, so let me button this up here, and we will be on our way. That servant leader still has not come back. So here is my excellent survey, and yes, so here's the deal. What I would need to do first is actually decide what's the weather like. It's very clear and sunny and bright blue sky, and I would record that. And then something that's terribly important, I would need to say where I am. And it's not good enough to just say walking down a sand dune looking for the salt marsh. You actually have to get technical and get the latitude and the longitude and the county. And you know, you have one of these in your packet, so I won't bore you. But a field study guide has no real value if you don't mark down the conditions and the exact location. Because if you found something really incredible or special or unusual, you could never go back if you didn't have that information. All right, this visual survey that I have on the front of my clipboard, which of course is always necessary apparatus when you're out hiking or doing anything with Mrs. D on field trips and expeditions, that's a high school one and it's complex. In the packet that I have sent you, I gave you a copy of that so that you could see what you're going to get when you hit the high school. This kind of stuff leads you into university studies, by the way, and people have careers from this kind of stuff, so we're getting you ready to go out and earn money, perhaps, if this is your first love. Yours is a little simpler, and there's something for you to do in the packet we're sending you, and it asks you to go and do a survey in your yard. And what I've given you is very simple things, and then one form where you can kind of take the information you gathered and consolidate it. I wanted to tell you that it's easy peasy, as my grandkids say, to find your latitude and longitude these days, because Mom and Dad have phones. And all you got to do is go to your smartphones or their smartphones, and you can come up with that information. So we'll be giving you some of that coordinates later on for some places you need to know about. Oh, I hear that bird. I hear it. I'm looking for it. Yes, it's way up in the trees. Oh, the trees. I said last time I would mention why the leaves look green. And maybe some of you know. And if you're going to say because they have chlorophyll in them, welcome to the wetlands of the Golden Isles, one of my favorite places. Just look out there at that beautiful scene, needle rush, and then the cordgrass, the golden cordgrass, hence the name. Hi, all right, so I'm back from my excursion. We found a salt marsh, and you'll get to see some of that in a little while. And you know what? I will probably help Mr. D by explaining some things as he actually puts the beautiful footage up so that you can get some teaching at the same time. But you know what I'm doing right now? I am getting ready packets, okay? These packets that I'm going to put in the mail. I'll have them in the mail tomorrow, one for every one of my students again. And in these packets, so don't worry about the stamps. You know, Mr. D's just given up his coffee, and so it's easy. Okay, in these packets here, you're going to have some more pages printed in color just for you. Awesome, with things to do. And I wanted to just touch base on a couple little things. I will go over this when we Zoom, of course, but once again, at the beginning, we've included, this is what's in the packet, this is what I want you to do, and this is when it's due. I hope you guys are being diligent about putting all of this onto a calendar so you're not getting confused. All right, I have a calendar with these very things. This is due, this is due, this is due. So I'm trusting you to do that. And if you haven't, impress Mom and Dad by going ahead and starting that now. You can check it on this page as well, but a calendar helps you a whole lot. Okay, so this is different. I want you to understand that we have extended this work over 2 weeks. So you'll only get this packet, which is going in the mail tomorrow, and that's going to last you for 2 weeks. There's a lot of stuff to do and some studies. You know, we're not trying to kill you or anything, but we certainly want you to know that we are finishing our year strong, because that's what God wants us to do. Okay, so that's enough sort of about that. we've called this packet on the bottom of all the sheets, instead of the green lesson or the purple lesson or something, we've called this Wetlands. It's actually an extension of stuff from the green packets, but I wanted you to know it's called Wetlands. Now, why have we called it Wetlands? Well, one of the zones that we talk a lot about when we go on this trip, and we take you to, and you're going to see it shortly, is, you know, the salt marsh. Is the salt marsh a wetland? Yes, the salt marsh is a wetland. The SLOUGH is a wetland. And then there's another wetland that we would not have seen this year, but some of you may have been there. But you know, a swamp is a wetland. And of course, we have the largest freshwater swamp in the whole country, in part of our state, and that is Okefenokee. By the way, that means land of the trembling earth. So that's 3 different kinds of wetlands, and maybe as we're looking at the video, maybe we'll compare and contrast some of the different facets and factors about these particular wetlands. How do you know if something's a wetland? I know, there's somebody out there going, because it's wet. Well, you know, that's actually not how you know if it's a wetland. There are 3 determining factors, and I will give more explanation on the video, but the first one is, what is the vegetation? Yeah, what's growing there? See, a day or 2 ago, my yard was wet, 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 but none of my vegetation matches what the vegetation book says about what you have in a wetland. Now, we know for a fact that we got the right vegetation in the ones we're going to show you. What else? Soil. My soil outside does not match the determining factors. It's not an indicator that this is a wetland, and we can talk about that a little bit more too. We had an expert one time come and do a little bit of digging, and we'll kind of show you what he was digging for. And then, oh, I should add this. Is anybody listening? No. You know, whenever we go down to the marsh, it really smells bad. And everybody's looking around like, okay, this smells really bad. It smells like rotten eggs. Funnily enough, that's one of the factors about the soil. It's supposed to smell bad. All right, just thought you'd like to know that. Okay, so those are the first 2, and the third one is hydration, which is about how much water is hanging around. Because in a wetland, it's either always on top, surface water, or just underneath and it's waterlogged. So we'll see some of that later, and it's kind of one of my favorite things to do because it's one of my favorite places to go. Do you know why? Because there's lots of wonderful bird life and lots of other little things that I like to watch all the time. You're thinking, what? Well, you'll see in the video. Now, we don't just want you watching the video, we want you to learn that when we're down there, one of the things we have to do if we're training our high schoolers, and we start with you guys, is to teach them how to do surveys, visual surveys, to get actual information. And I just wanted to point out that in the packet I've sent you, I asked you as one of your activities to read from Exodus 13, verses 17 to 20. This is quite an interesting thought that God gave me. I was doing some study, and all of a sudden it jumped out at me that when you read that, it matches exactly the 6 steps that you go through for a visual survey. So I want you to look at this very carefully, and it would be very interesting if you took your Bible and you actually marked up what God was telling Moses and how I have pulled that out and put step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and step 6 for a visual survey. Then the next few pages ask you to go and practice this in your backyard. Now, most of you do have a backyard, and there's plenty of stuff to see right now because things are blooming and springing up all over the show. It doesn't have to be a park, just a backyard. And when you do a visual survey, you don't do the whole entire yard. You set boundaries. Okay, I'm going to make this much space, maybe 6 foot by 6 foot, or maybe you literally stand with your hands like I'm doing and go, okay, what I can see as I reach out, whatever I can see there, that's what I'm going to kind of be looking at. And if you say, well, all I'm seeing is just grass, okay, but what else? Are there little insects there? Is there a bird hopping through it? Just use your imagination to really get into the survey. Now, when we get to high school, we go very detailed, and we actually do box studies, or we set up transect lines, and it's wonderful. So those of you who are moving into high school fairly soon, you're going to learn a whole new skill that can actually end up in a job. So that's the first few pages. You'll have fun doing that. It's not going to happen just all in one instant. It may take you a few days to do that, and that's all right. Remember, you have 2 weeks to finish this whole packet. By the way, don't go trespassing on anybody else's territory, and stay 6 foot away from everyone, remember, at this point. You want your clipboard, take it out, and if it's sunny, put your sunscreen on, wear your hat. Oh, did you like my hat? I hope you've all made one like that. I'm kind of sad. Long ago, we had students who'd say, oh, I want one like that, and they'd rush off and make their own hat. So when they shook their heads, there were no bugs. Well, we'll just see what you turn up with the next time we see you. Now, there is a little lab that's added to this page, and you may be wondering why in the world we have a lab called capillary color stuck in the midst of all of this. Well, actually, I wanted to put another lab in, but I wasn't sure that you'd be able to do this on your own without some help from me. So I put this capillary color one in instead, and it's chromatography. It teaches you how to pull color out of something that you didn't know had varieties of colors. But the reason for that was you can actually pull some of the pigment colors out of leaves. But there's a special technique to do that, and you also have to use something pretty strong to suck it up. Well, not dangerously strong, but acetate or nail polish remover. And I didn't figure that you guys would have goggles at home, so it's not really the safest thing for you to be doing that at home without all of this. Okay, so we can talk about that another time. I mentioned in my little video when I was plowing around looking for the salt marsh, which you will see soon we found, I mentioned that plants do 3 things. So I just want to tell you now that there is going to be a test on this. Now we're uploading the test. So you will see on your packet when you get it that there is 2 tests included, a page 10, Wetlands page 10 and Wetlands 10b, but we're uploading those tests for you. So that's where those will be. But when it comes to transpiration, just basically what that means is just that the plants are exhaling water. They're giving off moisture. They're giving off water. But what part of the plant gives off the water? Now, probably you're all going, well, obviously the leaves. Yes. But did you know that's only one of the 3 places that transpire, and they each have their own name? And I want you to be smart, very smart. So I want you to know this. So if they're giving it off through the leaf, and this one's not a very good example of one, and I don't want to hurt my poor little plant anyway, but if we had a microscope and you looked underneath the leaf there, you would see, well, I'm just going to call little holes, but actually they're stomata. Okay, and it's a little opening that opens and closes as water makes the surrounding cells, which are called guard cells, turgid, right? It can open it and then it relaxes in the evening and closes again. That kind is called stomatal transpiration. That's logical. Well, where else could you be losing moisture from a plant? I'm thinking. You know what? In stems, sometimes you have little openings, little lenticles, little openings, okay? It's not a lot of loss, but bark can lose water, and that would be called lenticular. I love these words. You know, if you guys still play that old-fashioned game called Hangman, here's words nobody will guess, okay? Or spelling words too. So now we've got stomatal and we've got lenticular. Is there another one? Yep. Okay. Leaves have cuticles, okay? And so there's a small amount lost through the cuticle, not a lot, a small amount. Think to last week. Remember those beautiful big leaves that we showed you from the magnolia? And I talked about how they were waxy and they had a thick covering. Well, I should have really said that the cuticle was very thick. So they did not lose as much through that method, but that would be called cuticular, okay? Cuticular, just a small amount. The biggest way that it does lose it is stomatal. But I want you to be smart, so now you know that. Well, I hope you know that. Okay, it's on the test. You better know that. All right. Anything else? Yes, how about photosynthesis? Okay, let's make sure we understand. As I've already told you, that's not breathing. That's the process whereby these amazing plants make food, okay? They are the only things that are producers. The rest of the population and the rest of living things are consumers if they do not have this ability to make food like plants do, okay? And they make it out of nothing. Well, not exactly nothing, but almost nothing. They have sunlight. Well, who made the sunlight? Right, God. On what day? Never forget how amazing God is, please. I know I use that word a lot, but that's because I stand amazed in His presence at what He's done. Photosynthesis is not breathing. Don't ever get that confused. Never say plants breathe opposite to people. They don't. Respiration is breathing, and that is releasing energy from the food that we take in using oxygen. However, when we talk about photosynthesis, we're talking about plants having the ability to simply use sunlight. And who made the sunlight? God. When? If you're saying day 4, you're right. Okay, so on day 4 when He made the sunlight, it didn't matter that plants came the day before, because what's 24 hours to a plant and to God? But they use the sunlight, and they are able to, using the sunlight, go through a very complicated process, and it's the Calvin cycle that you'll only learn when you get up to high school, but they go through this process where they can use that to actually convert other ingredients, which we call reactants, to make food. But then they have to have chloroplast to do this. So in a very simple way, what we're saying is, okay, we have the sunlight, okay, which is the energy that enables them to convert carbon dioxide and water into food, sugar, C6H12O6, sugar. And the waste product from that is oxygen, which we then breathe in, yes, through respiration. But plants also respire. You just don't notice that during the daytime because they're so very busy photosynthesizing, making this food, which of course is where we get our energy from when we're eating food. Oh, wait a minute. We studied that, didn't we? Because we did this. And if you are still waiting to get into the life science class, you will be ahead of the game because you'll know what this is. That's a food chain. And so we start with our producers, and then everything that eats a producer is releasing energy, and everything that eats the thing that ate the producer, and so forth and so forth. And so you have your consumers, and you have your primary consumers, and your secondary consumers, and your tertiary consumers, and then you have the permanent consumers. That's probably you guys now during the virus. Just eat, right? Okay. So that's a little bit about this. Now, guys and gals, this is a test. Study these pages well. So it's on the paper, it'll say Wetlands 10 and then Wetlands 10B. It's 2 different test papers which we are uploading. The study sheets are in your packet, but the tests are uploaded, and when you're ready, Mom or Dad, or if you're really smart, you can download them. Okay, so on Wetlands page 13 in the packet that you're getting, there is some information on here that actually talks a little bit about why do leaves appear green, and we discussed this when I was hunting for the marsh, if you remember, and the answer to that is because that's the color that's reflected back into your eyes. This page goes on a little bit further, and it tells you something. I'll just read it to you so that you're excited to get your packet. During photosynthesis, this, I told you it's complicated. You get the details in high school. There are 2 types of chlorophyll in the leaves. Did you know that? No, you didn't. I haven't taught it to you yet. Okay, there are 2 types of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Why? Because they're a little bit different. And you know what? They absorb different parts of the light spectrum. Okay? And what happens is the green and yellow part of the spectrum is not absorbed terribly well by either of these, and so that's the part of the spectrum that is reflected. Those light waves are reflected, and that's what you see. Now, in the fall, it's different because the chlorophyll is not produced anymore, and so other pigments that have been there all along are now visible, and that's the light that's being reflected from those pigments. Isn't that cool? It's just really awesome stuff. I love this stuff. Thank you, Lord, for giving us all these beautiful things and all these hidden details in plants. Now, there's a strange activity here where I'm asking you to do something, and we're uploading the leaf that you're to do this on. So you'll have to print that one off. That was a little difficult because we were doing front and back printing on the printer, and so we didn't put this page in, but there's just a leaf, and we want you to actually punch out construction paper in several colors. Okay, we want you to take a lot of green, and the best part of that is, the punching. You'll have a sore hand afterwards, but that's okay. If you have a one-hole punch, it goes fastest. And then we want you to get some yellow and some orange and some red. And on your leaf, we want you to start off with the other colors first, not the green. And we want you to glue them to your leaf. Yes, glue them to your leaf. Glue stick works the best at this point. It's a bit messy. Don't do it on your fancy dining room table or anything like that, okay? And then glue all the green ones over that so that when you look at your leaf in the end, it really looks green because you're not seeing the other colors because you've hidden them with the green. And then each day, just scrape off a few of those green ones. Now, I will say this. If you have younger siblings, they really enjoy doing this. I think my grandchildren are going to love doing this. When my grandson in middle school makes this, and maybe even the kids want to make one as well, you could help your siblings if they're younger to make this. And why are we doing this? It's a very good example of showing you what happens when the weather changes and it gets cool and the production of chlorophyll slows down and then stops, which is you picking off the chlorophyll, and then all of a sudden, ta-da, out pop all these gorgeous colors. And the colder and sooner this happens, the more brilliant the colors, which is why up north, way north, some of the colors of the leaves there are just brighter than the ones we get down here. So do that, please. Well, I think it's about time that we went off to the salt marsh myself, don't you? Of course you do. I've talked completely enough. Don't forget to read your paper very carefully to see what you have to turn in when. Extend it over 2 weeks. Don't forget there's some things that are still due from last week and the week before, because I'm trying to structure work for you so that you're never bored. I wouldn't want that, okay? So it's going to be fun. Look for your packet. We'll get that in the mail tomorrow. We really miss you. We really, really miss you guys. But I'm going to Zoom with you as usual next week. There will be a new Zoom number. Please check for that. We're trying to be very safe and change the number.
Stick it on. It was perfect. One of these, please, Kipper.
Okay, so you've been listening to me talking and going over this lesson, but we're about to start doing some stuff in the field, and there are no notes on this. But of course, because you're my students and you're well trained and you're amazing and brilliant. I said brilliant. Good, extra credit. Get your pencil, your paper, and take some notes. You know, it's not very often you have somebody that has all this information that they're spewing out at you on a video, so take notes. Great. Thank you. Okay guys, let's go. We're heading to the marsh, and the first thing we'll be able to look at is the vegetation, which is one of the determining factors of, is this a real wetland? It's pretty cool, and I'll point it all out to you as we go along. We're very close to the mouth of the estuary in this area, and so the water rushes in at high tide and rushes out at low tide, and you can see that there's significant erosion taking place on a daily basis. And of course this is exacerbated when there is a big storm or high winds driving in more water. And you can see from fallen trees that at one point there were some things growing on the edge of this bank that have fallen in and died. And right now it is high tide, and so this is flooding. We would call it flood tide. The marsh is receiving its daily watering. Because this is a semi-diurnal area, it actually gets watered twice during a 24-hour period. The sides of the marsh is lined right in front of us with one of the grasses that grows here. This particular one is needle rush, it's pokey, and we can see fiddler crabs running around, beginning to realize that the tide's coming in, and they need to get into their burrows and close up their little holes if they don't want to drown. But right at this very moment, some of them are finding delicious, tasty titbits for lunch. And we can see a channel that is dry-ish, it's kind of muddy at low tide and gets just covered with water at high tide. This runs throughout this marsh area. There's a change in what the vegetation looks like off to the right, and that would not be sea oxeye, that would be the beginning of some saltwort growing down there. Everything's lush and green in the spring, but by the time the fall comes, the little plants that are just now getting blooms will be just completely yellow. And looking out here, all we'll see is yellow button flowers on top of the sea oxeye. It's a magnificent sight when the flowers are in full bloom. As goes with the name salt marsh, there are plants that need to be salt tolerant to survive and grow, and there's two very specific ones that thrive in the salt marsh. One of them is the very succulent glasswort, also called pickleweed. And usually growing very close to it you will find what we call saltwort, and that grows on a woody stem, so you can tell the difference. It's a little more branched coming off of a woody stem. This is a fun and safe exercise if you are actually doing this as a field study. You can taste a little bit of the saltwort and a little bit of the glasswort, and pretty soon you'll realize that this would be a strong salty seasoning. They have an amazing ability to be able to pull the salt right out and up through part of their hollow makeup within the little leaves. The periwinkle snail is a fun thing to find in the marsh. It likes to climb up the cordgrass at flood tide so it doesn't drown. So it's a very clever little creature. It goes down at low tide and comes up at the high tide. One of the things that you can see is that a true wetland has water on top, and this is definitely a true wetland. Another way that you can tell something is a wetland is if the water's not staying on top, it starts to seep underneath and everything becomes very waterlogged. And this is a good picture of that. It's also an excellent place to see that the oysters have found a good surface on which to settle, and the spat, which is the little babies, have settled there, and they're forming rakes, which is groups of oysters. You know, they're filter feeders, which means they take all the yuck out of the soil and purify. It reminds me of something we need to know for our children and for you students. If you hang with people who get into the muck, you are going to be pulling out all of their garbage instead of going to the Word of God and letting your mind filter everything through what God's Word says. Oysters teach us an excellent lesson. Okay, so this isn't okay. I'm rushing around in the marsh and you're all sitting there falling asleep. On your feet, all of you. No, don't sit there. Get up on your feet. I need you to conduct yourself in a good manner and follow suit with this next activity. You do what we do, please.
Everybody's got a water buffalo. Yours is fast, but mine is slow. Where'd we get them? I don't know. Everybody's got a water buffalo. Ooh. I took my water buffalo to the store. Got it, said head stuck in the door. Spilled some lima beans on the floor. Oh, everybody's gotta stop. You cannot go around saying everybody has a water buffalo because everybody certainly does not have a water buffalo. We're going to get nasty letters saying, where's my water buffalo? Why don't I have a water buffalo? And are you prepared to deal with that? I don't think so. So just stop being so silly. This has been Silly Songs with Larry. Tune in next time to hear Larry sing. Oh, everybody's got a baby kangaroo. Yours is pink, but mine is blue.
I get passionate about dirt. Dirt is awesome! Woo! I like dirt. And when I dig holes in the dirt, I like to have somebody fan me. So I recommend Say Our Fans from Atlanta, Georgia. Keep you cool, digging in the dirt. One of the three characteristics for determining whether or not you're in a wetland or not is the presence of hydric soils. And so I wanted to show you real quickly the way to determine whether or not you have a hydric soil in the area that you're looking. So the first step you do is you take a piece of equipment. You can either use a shovel, or I have an auger here which does basically the same thing, and you simply dig a hole into the soil to a depth of 12 inches. When you get to 12 inches, that's the limit that the biologists have determined affects the presence of herbaceous, wetland, or hydrophytic vegetation. And so to pull that soil up, when you pull it up, you want to look for color of soil. Okay, when you dig a soil sample, you want to take a look at roughly the first 12 inches of soil. And starting at the top is the organic layer, which typically has a lot of vegetative material and decaying material. And as you go down, you should see somewhat of a change in color in the soils from the top towards the bottom. You can notice just a slight change going from a darker color, which is influenced by the organic material, to a change to a lighter colored soil. So when you're looking at soils to determine whether or not you're in a wetland or not, in a sandy soil, which is what you would find in a coastal system, you're going to look for not only a color change that should get more gray as you get lower in the soil column, but also you should see some streaking, some vertical streaking in the soil, which indicates that organic material is moving up and down in the groundwater table because of the porosity of the soil. Hydric soils typically contain a little bit different coloration within the upper 12 inches, as well as a lot more organic content because of the oxygen that's depleted from the soil. So I'll dig another hole in this potential wetland area to look at the difference in coloration and organic content. As you can see, the wetland soil is much different in coloration and even in texture. It's a lot more grayer, and you can also find a lot of more organic material. Another way to determine whether you're a wetland or not is actually to smell it, because a wetland soil gives off a sulfuric or a sulfur smell like rotten eggs.
Okay guys, have a great day, enjoy your science, help mom and dad, stressful time for them, help with your siblings. This is a radical thought. How about cleaning your room and doing the washing? Oh, and the washing up. Well, and put the dishes away from the dishwasher. And mom isn't paying me to say this. We love you. Bye!